This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Paul Byrne. He is the president of Razoyo, a custom software development shop. He's based down in Texas. I'm not holding the fact that he is an adjacent Dallas Cowboys fan against him, but Paul, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jay?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You know, if the Dallas Cowboys were a threat to us, I think we'd have a little more of a contentious relationship.
You know, Jay, I'm like a typical Dallasite, I guess. I don't actually live in Dallas. I live near Dallas. And I'm a huge Cowboys fan when they're winning.
There you go. That's what, and we said that you told me that before, and I said, well, I guess that means you haven't been one for a while. So we're good to go. Everybody's happy up here in Philadelphia. Yeah. It's all good. All right. Well, tell me, where did you grow up, and did that have any impact on you being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely to a certain extent. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. I lived there until I was about 19 years old. And it wasn't so much, I guess, the place, is that my family, there were some entrepreneurs in my family. So my grandfather was an entrepreneur. I didn't know him when he was working that much, but I could tell like he was always kind of, testing me and coaching me to a certain extent about, that I might become an entrepreneur and would give advice, I guess. But at the time I wasn't really becoming, I wasn't on my journey to becoming or near becoming an entrepreneur. I guess I was on my journey to a certain extent. But my father had always had kind of like, and my mom as well. My mom opened up a shop. She was a very talented seamstress. And so she and some friends opened up a fabric shop, and they ran that for a few years. And my father, who was a rocket scientist, but also just kind of a technical engineer in general, would develop products and launch these side businesses. And he was great with the technology side, but not so good with marketing and sales. But he always kind of had this, I guess he revered entrepreneurs quite a bit. So that always stuck in my mind. And this was, I grew up in the late 70s and early 80s, which is when that word entrepreneur really kind of surfaced into the common vernacular and people started paying attention. Before that, they were small business owners. But then, we started talking about entrepreneurs in it. And there was a lot, going on in society in general, talking about entrepreneurship. In fact, I think the word entrepreneurship was coined around that time when I was growing up. So it's definitely kind of, part of the environment.
Have you seen that word change over the years? What is that? Does it mean the same thing now as it did back then? I know the context is different, with the ability to start a business from your couch, on a laptop or your phone, but has it changed at all what it means?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's always kind of been, I've always vaguely interpreted it to mean, someone who takes risks by opening their own business and growing a company. And I know now there's a lot of kind of connotation in the VC world, kind of has a different meaning there. And also there's a kind of a different connotation now that there's, all these online businesses, right? And so, it seems like now the internet is always involved. Whereas some of the entrepreneurs I knew growing up that were friends with my father, they made sales, they would advertise in tech magazines that people would get, and they'd have like these tiny little, classifieds in the very back of it selling some sort of circuit board or something. And, the business was done around the kitchen table, and, that's where they packed up their products. Very different today, though. Like my daughter has a business that she started really just a few months ago. Her husband's an engineer, but he's a lacrosse player, and he designed this device to sort of re-grip lacrosse balls, because if they get slick, they don't play the same well as on game day. So to keep from just kind of constantly buying new balls to practice with, he invented this re-gripper tool. And she's selling on TikTok. In fact, I even did a video on TikTok. It went viral. It got like 500,000 views or something like that. And, between my video and other videos, they really kind of created a name for themselves. She learned how to advertise online. Now, really, she's married. She has two kids. One is just 4 months old. And she's able to be really an effective entrepreneur. I mean, the business has grown within just a few months to the point where, it's not really replacement income, but it's a nice little income
Mm-hmm.
for them. And, being able to do that as a mom of two young kids and, a wife and, person who has other things going on as well, like I would think that would have been very difficult back in the 70s and 80s. So
Yeah.
I kind of see this change, as having a profound effect on the experience of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the barrier of entry, I think the answer is always like, when is the easiest time to start a business in history? And it's like today. Or I mean,
Now,
it's
yeah,
just like, it's never easy. Like every day, it's just
it's
some other
easier.
barrier of entry being
Yeah.
knocked down where people can find a way, if they have kids, if they have whatever, it's to find the time. And like you said, you spend an hour on a video and it gets 500,000 views that, may lead to a huge surge in product, purchase. And
Mhm.
then you have a whole nother set of things to deal with. So very cool.
Yeah. And we spent 5 minutes on that video.
Right. Yeah.
Literally one take. It's a 1 minute TikTok
It's a
video.
1 minute. It's a one.
Yeah.
It's 5 minute take, and you X sales by 100%. It's a very interesting space to
Amazing.
grow up.
Yeah.
Especially for kids that have parents and as entrepreneurs that have done it the hard way, I guess you could say. But our parents would probably say we have it way easier than they did as well. So,
In
what
just
was
about every way possible.
in
Yeah.
every way? Yeah, I mean every way possible for sure. I mean, the uphill and in the snow both ways for sure. So, what was the first business you actually started?
So that's a good question. I'm trying to think if there was anything before Razoya. It kind of evolved. So it wasn't a business that I started, but I was invited to become, when I quit my job back in 2009, I was invited to become a partner in an existing business that I kind of helped transform from a data entry business where my business partner had developed a system where they would receive, things like companies would hold, you would have a table at a soccer game and you would sign up for some Allstate insurance quote and they'd have like, boxes and boxes of these forms that were filled out. And their business was to enter the data and put it online. And their production mechanism was they had dozens and dozens, he and his wife had dozens of these stay at home moms who would come by, they'd pick up a batch of these, forms that needed to be input. They would take it home, and initially they would do it on spreadsheets. And then those would come back. There was kind of a QA process, and then that would get uploaded. And they had several clients, like including like the Federal Reserve of all, organizations. And it wasn't, a big business. It wasn't replacing anybody's income at that point. But when I quit my job, like I needed an income. And so I kind of worked in that business and helped to grow that business. And then that led to us marketing. And my business partner is really the one that started this, was he would send out emails to people who were on the receipts, of course, with the permission of the company, and try to sell them additional products. And those were great. We started, we had a very cheap source of email because we would just pay the companies that we worked with based on the sales that we made. And so at that point, like I actually had to build a website, and that's how I got involved in e-commerce. So technically the word Razoyo, I think we registered it in 2011, but I had been working in e-commerce for maybe about 18 months at that point. So I would say if like I was to choose a point in time, like that was my first business that I developed was Razoyo.
Where did the name come from?
So I have a background. I lived in Italy for quite a while, and it's an English transliteration of the Italian word for razor. Because I was trying to think of something sharp, cutting edge, right? And so the Italian word is Rasoio, but it's pronounced the same way our company is pronounced Razoyo, and that's where that came from.
I love that.
Oh,
So
and by the way, I wanted a short name that if you searched it,
right.
our
Yep.
business would be the only thing that came up, and it couldn't have any B's, P's, V's, D's, or T's in the name
Okay.
because if you're giving it over the phone, like those are people will misinterpret that.
I
So if
mean,
you're trying to spell out the URL,
that's pretty well thought out. I like that. And I bet there's probably not many other Razoyos to this day, I would guess, if I
yeah,
had.
Google us, and there'll be a couple of other results, but it's a one-page Google results outside of the stuff you find on our website.
I love that. So who was your, I mean, in its kind of current iteration, what you guys do, which is a lot of different stuff, but custom software development, a bunch of other stuff. Who would you kind of consider your first customer and how did you guys land those?
So definitely the first Razoyo customer was eBay. And I got involved, well, not really. Before that, my first customer was the company that I had just recently left.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an agreement with them to market their products online, to set up an online website to sell the products. And so that was really kind of my first customer, but it wasn't really software development. So my first software development, I guess, was after eBay when eBay sunset a couple of SaaS platforms. One was Magento Go, the other was Pro Stores, and those people all needed a home. And we had been working with eBay, and so we knew the people on their platform. And so with eBay's permission, we contacted them and said, hey, you can hire us to help you, you know, rebuild your site either on Magento, or we can help get you on a SaaS platform, a different SaaS platform. And that's how we got our first customer. So our first like real build was a company called DPX Gear. And that was a company that it was formed by Robert Pelton, who's the author of books about military contracting, and he had a lot of stuff going on in Iraq and all that. He was also a journalist, but he sold knives. He sold these really nice knives that were designed for people to survive hostile environments, is what he called them. And so yeah, so that was the first one. It was a knife site. It's still around today, and it's still a great business for them as far as I know.
Love that. And, who is your customer now compared to back then?
Yeah. So back then it was mostly merchants selling online. And now our customers are companies that have they kind of fall into three categories. They have a really messy software base that they can't scale anymore. The server's crashing, whatever. It's kind of like a rescue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also have companies that have like a prototype. So they've got like some partially working system that does some of what they want, but now they're ready to market and they're ready to scale this. And so they have us rebuild it as, an actual, performant production application, web application, or SaaS platform, or it's a SaaS company that has a prototype. And then they need to go from like this hacked together prototype, and they want to actually start building out the software in a professional way that's maintainable and expandable and so forth. So those are kind of like the three customers that we have now.
What's the biggest pain point out of all those? Like the most on fire, oh my God, we need to work with Paul right now. Like, what is the thing that's the most on fire for any of those companies?
It's usually the company that has a system that they built, say, on top of WordPress by creating custom WordPress extensions, and it's no longer tenable. The thing just keeps crashing. It's become unwieldy. And they probably had multiple developers over time kind of pile on and glom on, additional features, etc. And they've got a problem, like their site's going down, it's losing data. Those people are kind of, the one who feel the most pain. And it's a big project to redo their site or their application. And, they need a lot of help and they need it now.
What's your number one sales channel?
Referrals. So our number one, most of our sales come from referrals on the e-commerce side of things. It's from the platforms that we work on. They either know us or we're partners with them. And so they will send us clients. And then on the custom development side, it's usually somebody that we've worked with or we know from some other capacity that knows that we, do the software development and, trusts us enough to, to have us look into their system.
Bigger partnerships for you guys, and how much time do you spend specifically trying to cultivate, real kind of joint beneficial partnerships instead of the, kind of throwaway 10% referral partnerships that seem to be very easy to acquire but don't really provide much value? How much time and
Yeah.
stock do you put into developing partnerships?
That's a really good question. I would say that's probably about a third of our marketing effort goes toward developing partnerships, and it's usually, relationships. And to build those relationships, you got to attend their events, you got to bring them leads as well. You have to, because we don't have any really paid partnerships. We've got a few one-off deals that we've worked with some companies where it made sense, where we pay them a fraction, a small portion of the revenue from a project, but most of it's, you know dealing with another company that we could both benefit from working together. And I would say, like I said, we probably spend like a third of our time developing those partnerships.
How do you make yourself attractive to bigger companies as a potential partner if you're not delivering a ton of volume, which is what a lot of, bigger companies need and want? How do you get your foot in the door? How do you start to show some value, so enough that they pay attention to you so you can cultivate the relationship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that we're that great at doing that yet, but our plan is to work with, a small group within a company, and then as we deliver results for them, kind of expand into the larger company. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, yeah, I'll let you know in 6 months if it's
Yeah.
worked.
Do a follow up. We'll do a follow up
Yeah.
partnership update episode. If you had to start the company over tomorrow with everything you've learned, same business, same line of business, what would be step one?
I would really probably attend a lot more events and conferences in industry verticals. And I would identify an industry vertical that I could serve really well and focus on that. I think that's probably what I would change.
What would you suggest to somebody who's been told to niche down by every uh, influencer and business person on earth, and they don't have a ton of experience in any specific vertical? What would your advice be to them to niche down if they don't necessarily have the background in health tech or any sort of specific vertical? What's an option for them instead of kind of niching down into a vertical?
I could give you an example because that's exactly what happened to us. Is Big Commerce, which is one of the e-commerce platforms we worked with, came to us, and they had a need where their merchants were needing to automate compliance at checkout. So you could only ship a firearm to a licensed dealer, and so they needed a way for their customers to sort of force a choice of a dealer, and that's the only place you can ship the firearm. And it's really a compliance issue. And so they came to us with that opportunity. We knew none of us owned a gun at the time.
Not in Texas, nobody.
I know. We got to be the only company that didn't. And so we just started like talking to people that had those kinds of businesses and reaching out to them and interviewing them and saying, "Hey, what do you guys need? How would you build this if you were going to build it?" And eventually we started networking into some people in the industry, and the more conversations we had, the more research we did, the more knowledge we had, and became a viable partner. And we built a SaaS platform that has now become the default kind of go-to for small medium online merchants who are on one of those platforms. So it's for us, it was just like that. Look around. What is this opportunity you have? And I guarantee you, every single industry, you know, everything you're interested in, there are pain points everywhere.
Mhm.
And if you can figure out how to address those pain points, then just keep researching, keep talking to people. I'm naturally an introvert, and it took me a lot of time to kind of feel comfortable going out and talking to people, but eventually it just became second nature.
Me too. I'm a huge introvert. and I hate going out and talking to people, but
Got to do it.
I tell people all the time now, because as I get closer to 40 this year, I'm like, the things that make me nervous,
Yeah.
scared, and excited, usually I would run from, but now they're the things I try to make myself run towards, because those are the things that keep you up at night, but they also keep you excited and they give you that energy that you don't really get from it. And running a business is one of those things where you got to be front and center, and it's something I always used to shy away from, but I couldn't agree more. Like, sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off, and you got to go after the things that are going to make real difference in the business, and that's you being the face of it a lot of times. So
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm turning 60 this year. And if I've learned one thing, it's that moment of discomfort that you feel in those situations doesn't last very long. And you just have to get over the hump.
Then the high on the other side is actually much better and last longer
Exactly.
than the running away from it. All right, one more
Yeah.
question, non-business related, nothing to do with business,
Sure.
and you can't say. This is a new part because people have been saying this to me recently. I can't say it. You can't say what you're doing now. So, if you could do anything on Earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
Wow. And not what I'm doing now. I would probably design and build embedded devices, like small, things like, controllers for, home sprinkler systems, or, webcams or something like that, that would have a specific, I just love doing that. It's a bit of a hobby of mine. And I just like, I see everything in my house that I want to automate. I'm like, other people must want to automate this too. And and then I kind of start writing software for it. But I have very little time to dedicate it to it right now. But I would probably open that kind of a business. I would definitely be an entrepreneur. I do not believe I would work for any other company, with the exception of a few. Like, maybe I'm curious enough about Tesla or a few other companies that I might work for one of them.
You might have
Um,
some openings at Tesla if you want to. All the recent stuff going on, you might be able to find a
that's
good
very
job,
possible. Yeah.
an easy job there. Maybe CEO. All right. Well, Paul, you're awesome. If people want to find out more about you, what they heard today, anything they want to reach out about, how do they find you, and then how do they find Razoyo?
Yeah, so kind of the same thing. Go to Razoyo.com and just hit us up on our contact page. That I will see it if you fill out that form. The other way to get a hold of me directly is just on LinkedIn. I'm Byrne PW, slash Byrne PW on LinkedIn, but just look up Paul Byrne on LinkedIn. There aren't very many of us. And if you tack the word Razoyo on the end of there, you'll find me.
You got the SEO game on lockdown, I think. So we're good. The people will find you, and we'll link to you in the episode. All right, Paul. Enjoy the rest of your week, brother. It's good talking to you, and catch up soon. All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Jay.
See you,
Take
man.
care.